Hi everyone, I'm Mrs. KJ, one of the science teachers here at MNVA. Some students have reached out that they're having a hard time taking notes in science class, and I wanted to do an example lesson with you to give you an idea of how to take more helpful notes, because sometimes taking notes in science is more difficult than taking them in other subjects like history. Human symphony. Have you ever heard an orchestra play? Percussionists beat the drums, trumpeters blow into horns, and harpists pluck strings. All of these people have different jobs to achieve one goal: create beautiful music. Your body works much like an orchestra. There are different types of cells in your body that do different jobs to achieve the one goal of keeping you alive. So again, they do give a study guide. I prefer to just take notes this way, but you are welcome to do whichever way you find more helpful. But again, maybe today try taking the notes that I take over on the right-hand side of the screen, just so you can see a different format than you might be used to. Advantage or not. Not every characteristic has a benefit. On the next screen, you will think about each characteristic of multicellular organisms and determine if it's an advantage or a disadvantage. Anytime one of these types of things show up, you definitely want to actually do them, but then you want to add them to your notes. Sometimes they have it look like a couple basketball hoops where you throw the basketballs into the correct place. Same thing. Those are things that you want to add to your notes in a table or a graphic organizer. So we have characteristics and explanation. So here's a short one, so it's a characteristic. We have cell specialization. Is that an advantage because they can differentiate, so certain cells perform specific functions? Or is cell specialization a disadvantage because it takes energy and resources to maintain structure? All right, so hit pause, decide which one you would put it. Required structural support. Okay, well, only spot that we have left is down here, but let's see if it makes sense. It's a disadvantage because it takes energy and resources to maintain that structure. All right, disadvantage because of their size. Well, which one would be a disadvantage because of their size? Would that be food requirements, ability to grow, or ability to store energy? Again, hit pause and figure out where you would put it. Which one of these is an advantage because it allows the organism to do more? Is it an advantage because it's the ability to grow or the ability to store energy? Again, hit pause. Which one would you put it in? And ability to store energy. Let's see if this makes sense. It's an advantage because they are not in constant need of finding food. All right, so now we can check our answers and yay, we got them right. Maybe you didn't, and that's okay. That's part of why you want to make sure that you do these and then add them to your notes. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to do it in a table style. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Down and 2 across. And in here, I am going to write the characteristic. And I'm just going to go ahead and add them down. And I'm going to check, am I able to copy paste? I am. So I would probably just copy paste them down. If you handwrite your notes, that's fine. You can handwrite them as well. Actually, handwriting helps your brain remember it better. But if you prefer to type, that is just fine. Now, for this next part, I'm not going to write down exactly what they put because the way that they wrote this down is not the way I talk. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to add another column. And in my column, I'm just going to write, is it advantage or disadvantage? All right, so cell specialization was an advantage. And why? It was because they can differentiate, so certain cells perform specific functions. So I'm going to make that shorter, and I'm going to use more common language words. So it's an advantage because different cells can do different jobs. All right, let's go to our next one here. We have food requirements, and that one was a disadvantage. Why? Disadvantage because of their size. So bigger means needs more food, right? Ability to grow, that was an advantage. Why? Because it allows the organism to do more. And that one I pretty much wrote the same thing. Ability to store energy was another advantage because they are not in constant need of finding food. So don't constantly need to eat, which is good. You can store some food and you're not eating all day, every day. Required structural support. That was a disadvantage because it takes energy and resources to maintain that structure. So keeping structure takes energy. And organisms want to conserve energy. They don't want to have to spend all their time eating. They want to conserve energy. Another way that you could have written these notes instead of a table is you could have done a graphic organizer. You could have had the characteristics, and then your next line could have been advantage or disadvantage, and then you could have put all the advantages on one side, cell specialization, ability to grow, ability to store energy, and you could have put all the disadvantages on the other side and then put the examples underneath them. So you want to make sure that you're writing your notes in a style that fits you. Eukaryotes. What do trees, turtles, mushrooms, and giant kelp all have in common? They are all multicellular organisms. Remember, multicellular organisms are organisms that are made of more than one cell. All multicellular organisms, like turtles and mushrooms, are eukaryotes. But not all eukaryotes are multicellular. Do you remember any eukaryotes that are single-celled? So hit pause, give yourself a chance to think. And an answer was some of the fungi and protists, or protistas, are single-celled eukaryotes. All right, so we finished our sentence. We want to write down our main ideas and our vocabulary words. So we definitely have multicellular as a vocabulary word. So organism made of more than one cell. And what's the opposite of that? It would be unicellular, because uni means one, like a unicycle is the bike with one wheel. Multicellular, multi means many. Another vocab word that we saw in here was eukaryotes, and that was the title, so we know that that's a big one. And what did it say about the eukaryotes? All multicellular organisms are eukaryotes. So under my multicellular, I could put all are eukaryotes. But then I would probably add the but part. But some fungi and protists are unicellular eukaryotes. So again, we're just making sure that we have, there's always exceptions and examples in science. So we want to make sure that we give some examples, and if there's exceptions, we write them down as well. Each of the kingdoms in the domain Eukarya contains multicellular organisms. All plants and animals, as well as some fungi and protists, are multicellular. Although these organisms live in different environments and have different structures, all of them have specialized cells. Where do specialized cells come from? That makes it sound like it's either going to be in the pictures or it's coming up. So I would adjust my notes a little bit to say all multicellular organisms are eukaryotes, and then I'd add my example, like plants and animals. But some, so we know that some fungi are and some aren't multicellular, some fungi and protists are unicellular. Where do these specialized cells come from? All right, so let's look at our pictures. These plants and animals are multicellular, and it's just showing you some different ones. All right, so some fungus, plants, and animals. Looks like specialized cells is going to be on our next page. There we go. So the first vocab word that we see here, even before we start reading, is differentiate. So I'd probably add that in my notes right now. And if it's a vocab word, I want to underline it, or you can highlight it, or use a different color pen or pencil if you're handwriting. So what is differentiate? To develop from a single unspecialized cell into a cell that has specialized structure and then a specific job. All right, so we can copy paste that, but nobody talks like this. So it's hard to remember definitions where they're written in a way that you don't actually talk like that in real life. So let's try and put this in more real life words. So differentiate, to develop from a simple unspecialized cell into a cell that has a specific structure and a specific job. All right, so I would just say that it's a cell with a specialized structure, and maybe not even specialized, you might want to just write special or specific structure, and a specific job. So we're going to break it down a little bit to the more common language words that we're going to use. Specialized cells. As cells continue to divide, an organism increases in size, and the cells differentiate to become specialized, performing specific jobs. For instance, some of the cells in your body differentiated into nerve cells, eventually becoming brain cells. Other cells differentiated into skin cells. Some cells become blood cells, and still others became taste cells on your tongue. Every cell in your body is specialized and does a specific job. Some cells absorb nutrients while others store energy. Some transport oxygen throughout the body, and some produce molecules to fight disease. Let's take a look at the pictures. So as a reminder, all multicellular organisms start from a single cell that divides. That means you, me, every person you know started from a single cell that then divides. So we don't start out with a brain and lungs. And this is true for all multicellular organisms. We have very specific kind of cells like this nerve cell, which you can see has a very different shape than, say, your red blood cells. And even some of these are your squamous cells at your top of your skin, for example. And all of them have different shapes because the structure helps them each do their specific job. So after reading all of that, I feel like I want to update our definition, and that's okay. That happens when you take notes that you want to maybe add a little bit to it. So I would say cells differentiate. And then maybe I'd even add the rest of it now that we talked a little bit more about what it does. The fact that it starts out as a simple unspecialized cell, like in picture A. So those are usually our stem cells. That's what they're called. But you could say cells develop or change into a cell with a specialized structure and specific job. All right, so what else do we want to add from these paragraphs? I would add that every cell in your body is specialized, because even though you started out with only being one cell and then two cells like that, and 4 cells, 8 cells, now every cell in your body is very specialized and different. I would include some examples. I would say nerve cell, red blood cell. And if you have a different one that you want to add, maybe you want to put skin, or maybe you want to put your taste buds, whichever one. But always try and put down a couple examples as well. Now, part of why they are different, cells have different structures, which help them do their specific job. And then, again, add some examples. So some examples are transporting oxygen, like your red blood cells. So transport oxygen, fight diseases, etc. You can add a few different examples, or if you have some other ones, you can as well. Now, I know my font is being really weird about changing size, and that's driving me crazy now, so I'm going to change that so it's all the same size. And again, though, I have my main ideas with my vocabulary words underlined, and then I have additional information underneath them. So this video is going to end because I'm cheap and I refuse to pay for the version that lets me make really long recordings. So we're going to continue this up in the second part of the recording, but when the video ends, make sure that you have all your notes taken care of if you didn't have a chance to pause and do that, and then we'll continue on the next slide in the next video.